Good afternoon. Social justice in South Africa was a matter close to George Bizos' heart as he worked with various bodies, among them the Legal Resources Centre. While the veteran lawyer may not have had a hand in its formation, he worked very closely with the institution, so much so that every year the Legal Resources Centre hosts a Human Rights Award in Bizos' honour. Joining us from the legal bodies, Nersan Govender. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News this afternoon. So I understand that at the inception of the Legal Resources Centre, Mr. Bizos played a role and continued to do so. Tell us about that.
He actually joined us in '91 and he was there for about 30 years. I mean, from the age of 60 till 90. He was an active lawyer at the LRC, playing various roles in addition to leading some of the key cases in the country at the time.
Mm-hmm. Talk to us about the importance of human rights and the work that he did in advancing that in a South African context.
You know, George, as everybody is saying in all the media reports today, was a giant of giants. You know, he led from the front. He didn't worry about earning a lot of money. He put money where his mouth is really, and actually fought for the underdog, and he worked tirelessly at that. In the same breath, he also mentored and skilled a lot of the young lawyers during the 30-year period that now are actually continuing the work that he did. And the importance of George's work in the last 30 years, I think it couldn't be more relevant today in South Africa as we are facing so many challenges. And I think some of the leadership in the country can take a leaf out of his book and lead and actually address the key issues that we are facing in this country at this time.
Talk to us about, when we speak about his work in particular, it's quite abstract, and you've raised now the importance of human rights even now. Can you expand on that for us?
Sure. I'll give you a few examples. George's work. He was a key lawyer in the treason trial in Rivonia with Nelson Mandela. He also was there at the Brown Fisher's trial. He did play a very huge role in the Marikana Commission. And just to quote him of the type of man he was, and he said, you know, when the judgment came out, he said that no one to blame is no longer a proper finding in this in any judgment in the country. Someone has to take responsibility for what has happened in the country. So now translate that to what is going on in our country in terms of corruption. You've got the Zondo Commission working on corruption. The NPA is involved. There has to be somebody that has to be taking accountability for what has happened in the country. That's the kind of work George was involved with. And like I said, he worked tirelessly to find the truth, and he did so eloquently. Yeah.
We know that on the 12th of September, Steve Biko's death is going to be commemorated. That's another inquest that Advocate George Bizos was involved in, always trying to find the truth. And with so many large cases that he worked on, with so much work that he put into the legal framework and accessing rights for South Africans, if you had to narrow down what his legacy is, what would you say that is?
You know, it's so difficult to actually narrow it down. I think two cases stand out for me: the Ahmed Timol case, where they were able to prove beyond reasonable doubt that Ahmed Timol didn't commit suicide, that he was actually murdered, and that case still needs to be finalized. The same with, he wanted to be involved in the Neil Agate case. Unfortunately, he was, he became frail at the time. So those are just two of the matters that come to mind. But the biggest one in my mind is that he led from the front in terms of the abolition of the death penalty in this country, and that was heard in 1995 at the Constitutional Court. It was one of the very first cases heard at the Constitutional Court, and the decision was written by one of the founder members of the LRC, Arthur Chaskelson.
Talk to us about the work of the LRC and how you intend to carry on the work that you've spoken about that he's done going forward.
I think the word fearless comes to mind when you think about George. And if you have a look at the work that the LRC, we've got a lot of young lawyers that work for us currently, and the COVID-19 period, they have risen fearlessly to take on the plight of the poor. And I'm talking more especially around the evictions in Cape Town that has been getting a lot of media coverage. And they rolled up their sleeves, they went onto the ground, and they took on the might of the authorities in Cape Town and won many of those cases. And it's now about to reach conclusion. So I think George's legacy would live together with the other founder members of the LRC for a very, very long time in terms of truth, justice, and just basically defending the constitutional rights of everybody that lives in this country.
We know that Advocate Bizos was born in Greece and is said to have fled the Nazis and come to South Africa, and the amount of work that he's done there. Can we learn any lessons from that, particularly that at this time in South Africa, online at least, there appears to be a rise in what has been described as nationalist sentiment, what has been described as a form of Afrophobia and xenophobia as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. One can take the learning and the leaf from George Bizos. You know, despite the fact that he was born in Greece and he fled here, and he, kept the Hellenic community going with the setup of the SABC College. But the thing about the SABC College is he defied the regulations at the time, and it was open to everybody. Regarding xenophobia itself, I would consider George as a true son of the African soil. He embraced this country. He embraced the people's plight in this country. And those that actually think about xenophobia and nationalism sentiments against other people that come here, refugees and migrants, need to think again about that. The Constitution is clear. South Africa belongs to all that live here.
The Legal Resources Centre's Nersan Govender joining us there to remember Advocate George Bizos and his life. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News.